Hello aspirants, looking at current affairs for 31st Jan. The 14 news items that have been picked up from the Hindu newspaper are these. We'll look at them in detail. The first one, panel headed by Vinod Rai to oversee BCCI affairs. So we have been looking into the Supreme Court's initiative in reforming the BCCI, Board of Control for Cricket in India. So these BCCI reforms have been recommended by the Lodha panel. So former Chief Justice of India, Justice R.M. Lodha, is heading this panel, and the recommendations which have been submitted by it in July 2016 and have been accepted by the Supreme Court as well are being mandated to be implemented and adopted by the BCCI as the apex body and all the state associations for cricket as well. So there have been problems in bringing in reforms. So present BCCI heads panel has been asked to step down, and a committee of administrators as proposed by the Lodha panel itself has been formulated by the Supreme Court. So this is a 4-member committee which has been appointed. So that is the news. It is headed by former CAG Vinod Rai. So he will be head of this committee of administrators. There are 3 other members to it too. A former women test cricketer, historian Ramchandra Guha, who is also writing on cricket, and IDFC CEO, who is an expert in finance, Vikram Limie. So these 4 members will be the committee of administrators who will look into the administration of BCCI temporarily and ensuring that the Lodha panel reforms are put into effect at the central level and in the state levels as well, and then the elections be held so that a fresh body of administrators would take over the job of administrating BCCI as well as then even at the state association level. So this is a committee of administrators to fully implement Lodha panel recommendations. Even the BCCI CEO presently, so CEO is like the administrative side. So BCCI CEO has been asked to submit a report to this committee of administrators detailing about the level of compliance which has been achieved by the BCCI and its members to implement the Lodha panel recommendations. So this is the status so far. Even this committee has been given 4 weeks time to scrutinize the compliance and give its report to the Supreme Court. So in a month, this report would also come to the Supreme Court. So these are the 4 members of the committee of administrators. The next news item is Supreme Court refuses government plea to stop hearing on judicial vacancies. So Supreme Court is hearing a petition on vacancies in the High Courts. So this petition should not be heard. So this petition should be dismissed is what the center means the Attorney General of India is demanding from the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court bench has said that since this petition has already been accepted, we are not going to reject it, and this is also a function. So it's the Attorney General or the government. The Attorney General is the government's advocate. So his point of view is, the government's point of view is that the judicial vacancies is a case which Supreme Court is strongly putting forth on its own as well, and now bringing in a petition on that matter too and putting its weight behind it. It is putting more pressure as such. So because the petition as such, another point made by the petitioner was also that this petition should not be rejected because it's not just about judicial vacancies in the High Courts, but also regarding increasing the strength of the judges in the High Courts because there is a huge backlog. But then even the present Supreme Court bench also said that increasing the vacancies, increasing the seats as such, strength of the High Courts is for a later period, because presently first of all vacancies have to be filled, then we can talk of increasing the strength. So that is on a priority of course. So presently the thing is that High Court judges will also be appointed by the same procedure which would be finalized by the MOP. So the whole history you should know about that judicial appointments have been taking place according to the collegium system. So this collegium system is completely the prerogative of the judiciary. So Supreme Court itself decides who will be the members of the judges who will be appointed to the Supreme Court, to all the High Courts in the states, transfer of judges from High Courts and all. So everything, Supreme Court and High Court judge appointments is completely under the control of the judiciary under the collegium system. What the government proposed to do was bringing in a reform here. So National Judicial Appointment Committee was proposed to be established. So an NJAC bill was also introduced. A constitutional amendment was done so that even the constitution is amended and this provision is constitutionally upheld too. So constitutional amendment means with consent of 3/4, 2/3, consent of 2/3 of the members in both the houses, and then also half the states giving its consent. So using that provision, constitutional amendment was done, and also NJSC bill was passed and an act passed. But all these were declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court bench. So this was on the ground that it takes away the prerogative which the judiciary has, because it was giving equal weightage to the judiciary and the executive in appointment of judges. So it says this will affect judicial independence, because if judicial appointments is under the control of the executive, then judicial independence would be compromised. So this was the ground on which those acts, on those reforms were rejected. But the Supreme Court bench at that time also accepted that there is a need for reforms in judicial appointments. That is accepted. So what should be the new procedure for appointment? For that, the judiciary said that we'll work together and bring out a way ahead. So then for this purpose, MOP, Memorandum of Procedure, was to be finalized. So draft MOPs have been put forth by the government, which presently the Supreme Court is looking into. So that's what the center says, that Supreme Court is not responding to the MOP which has been submitted by it. Once it gives a response to it, even the appointment of judges, how it would take place on a permanent basis, can be done. The Supreme Court's point of view is that till the MOP is finalized, at least the former way of appointment of judges should be continued. Means the collegium system should be continued, but the Supreme Court, but the center is not ready to drag the collegium system anymore. So collegium system of appointments, under that the judiciary gives the names to the center, and center has to accept them. If it rejects them once, it can be sent back for reconsideration, but when it comes back, it has to accept them. So what the Supreme Court says is that they delay the process by sitting on the names. So they don't take any action, and that is resulting in vacancies continuing. And in many courts, the cases have come forth that their vacancies have gone ahead to such an extent that the functioning of the high courts have also become difficult. So such cases have come forth. So on this only, vacancies in the high courts, there is a petition filed, which the government right now is saying that don't look into this petition, because already there is no need for hearing on this judicial vacancies now. Why should a petition be filed? But then because that's what the center says, that this is like parallel proceedings. So one, the proceedings which are taking place between the government and the Supreme Court on appointments, filling up these vacancies, and now a petition will also be parallelly running on this same issue. So the draft MOP is not finalized yet. That is again been highlighted. So all these points are put forth. So again, the Supreme Court has rejected to reject this petition. It says we'll be having hearings on this. This is our prerogative. We'll do it. So we'll have to wait and watch what happens further. The statement given here, the last draft was handed over, last draft of the MOP, Memorandum of Procedure, was handed over by the government to the Collegium in August 2016 for finalization. So no response has come on it yet from the Supreme Court. So this is the tussle between the executive and the judiciary. Mukul Rohatgi and the CJI, from present Chief Justice of India, Justice JSK. So their points of view as put forth. The Memorandum of Procedure, what does it look into is the eligibility criteria for appointments of judges, methods to make appointments, process which should be transparent, establishment of a secretariat in Supreme Court and High Court to look into the appointments, redressal mechanism for complaints against potential candidates for judgments, for judgeship, who should be appointed as judges. So these are the provisions under the MOP on which details have been provided and how appointments should take place, eligibility methods, and so on. The next news item is Reserve Bank eases curbs on cash withdrawals. So Reserve Bank of India has lifted curbs on cash withdrawals only for holders of current accounts. So current accounts are business accounts. Savings accounts limitations still continue, but for cash credit accounts and overdrafts, this curbs on cash withdrawals have been withdrawn. So savings bank accounts will continue with the same limitations which they had, 24,000, but then an ATM one-time withdrawal is also allowed for this amount. The next news item is medical audits will check stent prices, says activists. So health activists are demanding that the prices of coronary stents, which are recommended to heart patients, sometimes even in cases where they are not necessary to, so these need to be regulated. The prices need to be regulated, because it is seen that the doctors and hospitals take a huge cut when they recommend these coronary stents. In some cases, the prices increase by around 2000%. So there's a huge amount of cut which is taken by the doctors and hospitals. So the health activists are demanding that there should be government intervention here, standard treatment guidelines put forth for cardiovascular interventions with the help of expert doctors, which are free of conflict of interest, and then the clear prices should be regulated, because stents, coronary stents, are already included in the national list of essential medicines. So there's a need for regulation in this aspect too. What are these coronary stents and how they work? You can see here. So this is the stent. So through a catheter, the surgeon pushes it up into the artery, into the heart, artery in the heart. So this stent then comes in place. It is put in place where the block exists in the artery. So it's because of heart diseases, the blockage in arteries, that these stents are used. So it is put in place wherever the blockage is using X-rays. So it comes in position. Then the balloon inside, which is there, it is inflated. So this expands the stent and the stent stays in position. And then afterwards, the catheter is taken out and the stent remains in place. So this mesh helps in eliminating the blockage and ensuring free flow of blood and drugs through the arteries. So these are the stents which need to be regulated, their usage and prices. The next news item is Enforcement Directorate secures first ever conviction under money laundering law. So the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, which was recently amended in 2002 and came into effect from 2005. This is the first ever conviction under this by the Enforcement Directorate, which has been secured in the Ranchi Special Court. So this is former Jharkhand minister who has been sentenced to 7 years imprisonment for corruption cases. So this is the maximum imprisonment which can be sought under this act. Also a 5 lakh fine has been imposed on him. So this money laundering, basically money laundering means turning black money into white, dirty money into legitimate money. So money which has been secured by illegitimate ways, sources, is converted and shown as legitimate money. So this is money coming from drug trafficking, illegal arms sales, computer frauds. So all these are then converted into legitimate money. So that is called money laundering. So to prevent money laundering, what provisions need to be put into effect is that banking companies, financial institutions, they have to verify the identity of their clients, maintain clear records, furnish information to the financial units in the government. So this helps in ensuring that money laundering does not take place. So then there are powers to freeze the assets, seize and confiscate the proceeds of such crimes as well. So this is regarding that. So even the money laundering has been defined under this 2002 Act. Whoever has anything to do with proceeds of crime and projects such proceeds as untainted properties commits the offense of money laundering. So for this, Section 12 specifically provides that banks, financial institutions and all intermediaries in the capital market associated with SEBI Act must maintain records of cash and suspicious transactions. So that is how such cases can be detected. The next news item is Supreme Court junks petition against President, calls it malicious. So Supreme Court has dismissed a public interest litigation, a PIL, which had been filed by a litigant against the President of India, Pranab Mukherjee. So this, the Supreme Court says, is not allowed. So 2006 judgment, Rameshwaram Prasad and others versus Union of India. In this case, the Supreme Court bench had clearly stated that President cannot be a party in a litigation. So there cannot be a litigation against the President. He cannot be made a party as such. So on those grounds, this PIL has been dismissed. The next news item is defreeze accounts of Indira Jaisingh's NGO. So this is the Bombay High Court order that former Additional Solicitor General of India, Indira Jaisingh, whose accounts, domestic accounts of her NGO, the Lawyers Collective, were freezed by the Charity Commissioner. So this action by the Charity Commissioner, the order which was passed in November 2016, it says is not on a valid ground, because they say that the charge is that foreign contribution and domestic contributions were mixed. So there is no such provision under Foreign Contribution Regulation Act that the two cannot be mixed. So there is no clear ground made. So this freezing of the account is not upheld, and the Bombay High Court has demanded that the NGO's account should be defreezed. This is regarding the NGO too, non-governmental organization. So generally they are not-for-profit organizations. about Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. So this 2000 Act has been brought into effect to ensure transparency of foreign fund utilization. So this FCRA Act has been quite in news because even the central government has clamped down on various NGOs, especially having foreign funding, to know the source of these funds and how these funds are used. There were allegations that these are used for promoting convergence, means converting to Christianity basically was what was highlighted in many cases, and freezing of accounts of these NGOs was done, that foreign contribution could not come to these NGOs in India. So even it had been highlighted at the Secretary of State level by the USA on freezing of these funding coming from NGOs in USA. So this FCRA Act has been in use. So that what does it look into is transparency of foreign fund utilization. So it helps that such funds cannot be should not be used for anti-national activities. So regulation of these foreign funds is done through this act. The next news item is Center to hold talks to end Manipur crisis. The crisis in Manipur, which we have been seeing since the demonetization times, from 1st November 2016, even before the demonetization was brought into effect, the economic blockade, which is making Manipur suffer because of the Naga representatives. This is the United Naga Council, which is representing the Nagas in Manipur. It has put this blockade on 2 national highways in Manipur. So people are suffering, essential commodities are in a shortage there. So this has been going on for 3 months now. So presently the Home Ministry Center has said that there will be talks with the United Naga Council and the Manipur government. So Manipur government is Congress government, and this government had initiated a proposal to form 7 new districts. So this formation of new districts was not liked by the Naga group, and they said that this would result in Naga population being segregated there. So they were opposing this creation of new districts, but the state government, Manipur state government, said that they would go ahead. This is on administrative grounds that the new districts have been created. And also another point is that this new districts would not be used as the constituencies which would be formed for elections. So it had nothing to do with elections. It was just new districts formed for administrative convenience. But the Naga group decided to boycott it, and it is still continuing with the boycott. The UNC is said to be a part of the Naga umbrella group of Nagas as such, which is NSCN-IM, National Socialist Council of Nagaland, Isak Movia. So this economic blockade, since it is still continuing, the central government has now taken steps. Earlier, the central government had said that the Manipur government has to take initiatives to end this blockade. Otherwise, center will have to take some stern measures under the constitution. So it was hinting towards president's rule. At that time, Manipur government had also visited the President of India, Pranab Mukherjee, looking into whether there are chances that president's rule would be imposed in Manipur, but no such thing happened. Even the central government then said, asked the election commission to delay the elections, because elections in the 5 states which have been scheduled for now are, even Manipur is one of them, Punjab, UP, Uttarakhand, Manipur and Goa. So the central government wanted, since Manipur is suffering from such a volatile situation, elections cannot be conducted there, and it recommended the election commission to delay elections in Manipur, but the election commission did not accept this recommendation. Elections have been scheduled. So these were the developments. Now the latest development, this news is that the tripartite talks would be conducted between central government, state government and this Naga group. So a way out has to be found in this case. The next news item is IT notices to 87 under Benami Transactions Act. So this Benami Property Transaction Act of 1988, there have been cases in which, around 42 cases all across the nation, in which the new rules under this Benami Transaction Acts have been put into effect, and heavy penalties and rigorous jail terms up to 7 years have been enforced. So Income Tax Department has issued 87 notices and attached bank deposits worth crores of rupees in such transactions post demonetization. So this is regarding that Benami Transactions Amendment Act of 2016, the amendment which was done in 2016, bringing in more rigorous provisions under it. So Benami transaction is a transaction which is made by a person who is not actually the owner of that property. So, like examples are like the rich they may buy a property in the name of their driver. So that is actually benami property. The property does not belong to the driver. He is not having the resources to buy such a property too. So when such cases are disclosed, so thus these benami properties are then taken over by the government, by these direct authorities. So that is a benami transaction which takes place. So under this penalty, huge penalty is also imposed, and rigorous imprisonment terms are also pronounced. The next news item is postmen to deliver banking services. So this is the India Post Payments Bank. So there have been 11 payments bank which have been approved by the RBI. So presently the India Post Payments Bank has been given the license to run this payment bank. So the USP, the unique selling proposition, USP of this payment bank is its ability to offer door-to-door banking services through postmen, Gramin, Dak Sevaks, and so on. So this is the benefit here. So these payment banks which have been established are for the purpose of bringing in banking system close to the people. So this is for financial inclusion. These banks which have been established, they have decided to offer higher interest rates too. So they are, even this India Post Payment Bank is offering 4.5% interest rate on rupees 25,000 deposits, and higher, it goes higher and higher as the deposits increase. Even its competitor Airtel Payments Bank, which has also been given the license, it has announced 7.25% interest on various deposits. So these are the competition. This is the competition which we are seeing right now. The purpose here is that banks go close to the people. So payment banks, the purpose for which they have been appointed is that they would be taking demand deposits up to a particular limit. So they have to take deposits maximum up to 1 lakh. So that is the limit. They cannot provide loans. They cannot give term deposits. So these are demand deposits like savings accounts or so on. Term deposits means a fixed deposit. So that term deposits are not allowed. Only demand deposits are allowed. Loans cannot be given. So then deposits raised by them, they have to be invested in government bonds, and maximum of 25% has to be invested in an account with another bank. So these are the provisions for payment banks. These are the 11 entities which have been selected for providing licenses for payment banks. So Department of Post is also one of them. Then of course this is for financial inclusion. The other type of banks which we have already seen few days back to is small banks. So small banks and payment banks are different. These are called differentiated banks. So differentiated banks means they are there for particular purpose only. Like payment banks, they cannot give loans. So that way, small banks actually can give loans. So what is the difference? We'll look at that too. The requirements for setting up these are here similar. The minimum paid up capital required for them, promoters initial minimum contribution and lock-in period, then promoters shareholding should be brought down over a period of time. So initially it will be high, but then gradually it should be brought down. So these provisions are there. What is in functioning? What are the differences between the two? So payment banks cannot undertake lending activities, but small banks, these are small banks with 10 years of experience. So these are residential individuals or professionals. So individuals have been also given license for small banks. So individuals, professionals who have 10 years of experience in banking and finance companies and such finance societies are eligible as promoters to set up small banks. Even existing non-banking finance companies, microfinancing institutions, local area banks have been asked to be converted into, have been allowed to be converted into small banks. So small banks can provide loans. There are limitations. They can give small loans in small amount only. They cannot give to the capitalists as such. Then foreign shareholding in payment banks would be as per the FDI policy. Payment banks will be required to have at least 25% of access points in rural areas. So rural centers should be at least 25% is also a provision here. So these payment banks actually have been taken over by many mobile operators, telecom service providers. The reason being that USSD, unstructured supplementary service data. So this USSD, which we have discussed quite often too. So these are like, you send in a message *123# or something like that. So to know in your balance or something. So this was used in earlier times under these simple phones. So smartphones do not need this provision, but in these basic phones, mobile phones, USSD is the format through which communication can take place. Even bilingual communication, multilingual communication is also possible. So this is a platform which telecom companies can use and allow their customers to check their balances or apply for new plans. So this is what will be used by many payment banks, like Airtel has also been given the license for this. So this is how the mobile platform can be used with payment banks. And so in August 2015, RBI had given in principle licenses for payment banks to 11 entities, but at least two of them have already opted out as well. So they have expressed their inability to go ahead with it. They say there is a long gestation period. The revenue stream for payment banks is limited. They are not allowed to offer loans. So their main objective is to provide remittance services, that any money transfer which is required to be done, those services can be provided. So even competition is quite high. So Cholamandalam group has also opted out, saying that because competition is quite high, they cannot pursue and go ahead with this payment bank's plan. So this was also a setback which had come. Then this is regarding the small bank. Suryodaya, a small finance bank, which was recently started banking operations on 23rd Jan 2017. It has offered 9% on fixed deposits. So now this is a small finance bank. So small finance banks are allowed to have term deposits too and allowed to give loans as well. Of course, there are limitations. They are not same as other banks as such in general. So what is the difference between small finance banks and banks as such? We'll look into that too. So these fixed deposits with maturity of 1 to 2 years, they'll provide 9% interest. So this is much higher than the present interest rates which are provided by universal banks. So small finance banks and the general banks are called large universal banks. So they provide as much as around 7% of interest on such deposits of 1 to 2 year tenure. So this is the higher deposit interest provided to attract customers towards it. So Suryodaya, a small finance bank, it was originally a microfinance institution, but now it has converted into a small finance bank. So what is this small finance bank to? You can see 10 entities were awarded small finance bank licenses. So this procedure was also initiated and finalized in November 2014. And what are they allowed to do is they can take deposits and provide loans to. They can distribute mutual funds, insurance products as such too. 75% of their lending should be to the priority sector. So these are small finance banks, means for the priority sector. So lending majorly to the priority sector. Maximum loan size should be 10% of the capital funds to single borrowers and 15% to a group. So whatever capital fund it has, maximum loan size can be only 10% of that capital fund. If it is a single borrower, and if it's a group of borrowers, 15%. Minimum 50% of the loans should be up to 25 lakh. Means more than 25 lakh loans should not exceed. Minimum 50% should be up to this only. So that is what it is called, small finance banks. What they cannot do, they cannot lend to big corporates and groups. They cannot open branches without the prior approval of the RBI within the first 5 years. Then other financial activities of the promoters must not be mingled with the banks. It cannot set up subsidiaries to undertake non-banking financial services activities as such, which it was undertaking. It cannot be a business correspondent to any other bank. So these guidelines are also there, and the initial requirements as such are provided here. So this is the final differentiation you can see between payment banks and small finance banks. So they can accept deposits up to 1 lakh per individual customer. They cannot lend. They can lend. They can take deposits of any amount. They can open small saving accounts. They can finance small business units, unorganized sector. So they can provide loans. They can only open accounts, saving accounts. They can provide remittance services, money transfer services. They can also provide remittance services. They can have ATM machines issued. Even debit cards can be issued. Credit cards cannot be issued because they cannot give loans or no credit. Here they can issue. So that is there. They can distribute products such as mutual funds, insurance. They can also distribute mutual funds, insurance and pension products. And here it is there, ensure that 50% should be up to 25 lakh. So loans which are provided. So this we have already seen. The next news item is Banks Gyan Sangam to discuss digitization, consolidation of public sector banks. So this Gyan Sangam, the third edition of this would take place, which is a retreat for all public sector banks, government-owned financial institutions, insurance companies, and so on. So all these will come together in March 2017 and have a meeting. It is scheduled in Bangalore or Hyderabad. It would be finalized soon. So this is a Gyan Sangam, means they will be discussing about how digitization can go ahead, how public sector banks can be consolidated, what should be done about the non-performing assets. There are also proposals to establish a bad bank. So what is this bad bank? It is called a national asset management company. So because public sector banks have huge non-performing assets, so it is recommended that a bad bank be set up and all these non-performing assets be handed over to it so that they can reconstruct the assets here. So this will be a national asset reconstruction company. This will include government and private sector as stakeholders, so they can turn around the stressed assets and restructure these assets and make them profitable, and the banks can be eased out of this non-performing assets. So this was also a proposal. So this will be discussed about its pros and cons as such. Then also the banks board video, which has been established. So this is part of the banking reforms, the Indradhanush 7 reforms which had been pronounced for the banking sector as such. So public sector banks need to be consolidated too. That is to be looked into. Appointments should be autonomous. So this banks bureau, board bureau be made autonomous further. So these are the areas in which discussions would take place. Also strengthening banking correspondence. So banking correspondents are people who allow transactions, banking transactions to take place in rural areas. So they have these machines and they go to rural areas and take deposits or even give withdrawals. So these are banking correspondents, bank sathis as they are also called. Micro ATMs, point of sale machines have to be encouraged. So these aspects will be discussed in this Gyan Sangam. So this was regarding the banks boards video. So boards for appointments will be replaced by this banks boards video. So this has been done. Vinod Rai is the chairman. The former CAG is the chairman of this banks board bureau. So this was the Indradhanush scheme also announced by the government. So one was banks board bureau to be established, capitalization for the banks. So this NPS surge has to be minimized, so that capitalization is required by the government to these banks. De-stressing the banks. So how de-stressing can take place, how these bad debts have to be managed. So that has to be looked into. Appointments, how vacancies on bank boards can be rationalized and filled up. Governance, less of government interference in day-to-day administration of banks. Empowerment, so government schemes to empower the banks. Accountability, so the performance can be measured, reviewed, and then accountability can be brought in effect. This is regarding the bad loans. So that is the reason why we are talking of a bad bank too, because non-performing assets, bad loans are increasing over the period of time. So they have to be taken care of. The next news item is boron may be the next wonder material. So this is regarding boron. So graphene is the revolutionary nanomaterial, one-dimensional nanomaterial, which has been developed and has unique properties and applications. Now the scientists have shown by computer simulation. So this is Mr. Boris Jakobson, who is a researcher at Rice University in US. He has, through atom level computer simulation. So simulation means considering if this happens, then this happens, what will be the particular case. So simulation is not the actual scenario, but looking into it on a computer screen. So these simulations have shown that one-dimensional boron can also exist, and these have two well-defined phases, chains and ribbons. So these are two atom-wide ribbons which can be detected, formed, and these and single atom chains. So these metallic ribbons of boron, so boron is a semiconductor. When this ribbon is stretched, they turn into antiferromagnetic semiconducting chains, and when they are released, they fold back into ribbons. So this ribbon and chain has been simulated on this computer screen, and this has been happened earlier too. So earlier too, they had also predicted some such nanomaterials, carbon atom chains, which can exist, and they have been found in labs as well. So their predictions have been proved true as well. So now they feel that even this one-dimensional boron will eventually become a reality as well. So this will have many applications. So these carbon atom chains, which have been predicted by this Rice group and created by labs, are carbine, boron fullerenes, and two-dimensional films called borophene. So this is regarding that. Fullerenes which were found in 1985. So this is their structure. Then carbon nanotubes were found in 1990s. Graphene, the one-dimensional layer of this carbon atom chain in 2004. And finally, now we are moving ahead towards even one-dimensional boron, which may be discovered in the near future. Graphene also, it has its properties because of which it can be used at various ways. Like it can be used for manufacturing light materials. So in our cars, aerospace applications, light materials can be used. Carbon nanomaterials, this graphene can be used for having the body as such built. They can be used in solar cells. They can be used in semiconductor technology, in ICs. They can be used as transparent electrodes. So they can have these, we can have flexible transparent screens as such too. Then they can be used for printing. So printable ink can also be developed through them. Then they can be used in oxidation, gas water barrier oxidation experiments as such. LEDs. So they have many applications. So they act as gas barriers. That's why they can be used here. They act as heat. They have heat dissipation properties. That's why they can be used in LEDs. So their properties and applications are shown here. So this is regarding graphene. So various properties again listed down here, because of which it has various applications. So it has huge strength also. So mechanical property is that it's the strongest material ever tested. It is 200 times stronger than steel. So that is why graphene is much more stronger and can be used for various purposes and much more lighter too. The last news item is Turkey opens trial against Gulen. So this is US-based Islamic preacher Fethullah Gulen, who was basically from Turkey, but he has been in exile in USA for long now, since 1999. So Turkey, we saw a coup, military coup in July 2016. So this was, say, the fingers were pointed at Fethullah Gulen. The president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, said that this was allegedly masterminded by Fethullah Gulen. So presently, trials have been initiated against him and even a former army commander-chief. So these initiatives have been taken. So Fethullah Gulen earlier was a partner in the government here, along with this party of AKP. So this is the party, ruling party presently, Turkish Justice and Development Party, which is called AKP in Turkish language. The acronym is this. So they had come in power in 2002 and they had, despite their differences, come together and formed an alliance. But later, of course, differences emerged. So some people were said to be highly influenced by Fethullah Gulen. So there are supporters in Turkish police force, judiciary who own their allegiance to Gulen movement. So that is why the present government is highly skeptical of him and has come down strongly against this coup. And presently also now trials are taking place on this. So Gulen movement, they call, Turkish government calls it as a terrorist organization. But then Fethullah Gulen himself says that he has no role as such in the coup which took place recently. Plus the Gulen movement, he says, is a moderate Islamic movement and they promote education and such other initiatives. They do not have anything to do with terrorism or in bringing in coup in Turkey. So these are the news items. Thank you.